the meeting will start at this point. Anne Marie, do we have any guest speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is one speaker signed up to speak today. I am looking for him. I am unfortunately not seeing him in the attendee list or in the attendee list. It was Leon Dudley with Beckles Dancing Company, and I'm not seeing him. You don't need to read the background.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure if there was any, if there actually the imagery that we can see, but I'm happy to read the background for you all. The Lemon Avenue Streetscape Enhancement Project has been in the planning phase by the Department of Aviation for 7 years. The current plan will provide safety and quality of life improvements on Lemon Avenue in the vicinity of Dallas Love Field. These improvements will create a safe, walkable, bicycle, and transit-friendly Lemon Avenue. The project is the first phase of the larger Love Field Loop Trail project, which will construct pedestrian and bicycle trails, enhance bus shelters, streetlights, and other improvements on all roadways surrounding Love Field Airport. The design team of Kinley Horn and the Department of Aviation have identified 2 locations for our work along Lemon Avenue in Council District 13. Those 2 are the intersection of Lemon Avenue and Shorecuts Drive and the intersection of Lemon Avenue and Lovers Lane. On May 5th, the Department of Aviation hosted a virtual public outreach session. On February the 3rd of 2012, the public art staff hosted a virtual community outreach meeting. A survey was available for 1 month on the OAC website for community input. And on September 22nd, yesterday, we, the Public Art Committee, considered a vote to recommend the initiation of the art projects and are bringing that recommendation forward to you today. The estimated project budget is $94,000, and that is for both of the projects, and that's divided in 2, half and half. And there's a location map that shows you again where these are, and just to be triple sure, this is just to initiate the process of figuring out what these are going to look like and be.
Just for the record, Grady, you said 2012, and I know you meant 2021.
2021, yeah, there you go. That's an interesting case of dyslexia for you. Verbal. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion for this? Is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a discussion, question? All in favor? Sorry, raise the hands, I can't see it. Or say aye. because it is-
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
Yes. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we're going to change the agenda a little here at this point. We're going to jump down to briefings. We have a guest here today, Mr. Bertrand Vandenberg, who is the city attorney. Will give us a presentation on the Texas Open Meeting Act and Parliamentary Procedures.
Bert, do you want to take the first? Bring it a little closer into that.
To participate and to observe its government in action. Meeting is a lot of words. A meeting is any time you interact with any quorum of your group and you talk about public business. Even if you're talking with a third person, if you're exchanging information, that could be a meeting if it's with a quorum of the body. And I think you guys have 18, so that'd be 10 of you.
But right now we have 17.
17, 9. Anyways,
Let's see.
and so this really depends on if you're talking about the subject matter that you guys have purview over. One thing that's important to know is you can go to functions that don't have anything to do with the public business and don't talk about the public business. So you can have, city plan commission, the other ones, they all have cocktail hours that everyone goes to. You guys can have little social parties. That's all allowed. Just, you have to be careful that it doesn't turn into a meeting.
Could I add something?
Please.
We have traditionally had bigger issues with certain committees that only have, say, 7 members. And we did have a commissioner several years ago that was trying to get everybody together. And it only took 4. So the quorum can also be much more easily achieved on those smaller files.
It happens with subcommittees and committees of a larger body. People don't think about it, but the large body gets together and you'll have, and I'll go back to City Plan Commission because I was there earlier today and I'm going back there after this. They have a thoroughfare committee and they have a subdivision review committee, and those are only 5 members. So you could have 3 of those members at a social event talking about something, and that's a quorum of that committee discussing business. It is something to be careful about.
Speak up a little.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Everybody.
The important part is that deliberation or discussion is any exchange of information. And the Texas Open Meetings Act, it goes beyond the space-time continuum. You do not have to be in the same place or even dealing with each other at the same time to have a meeting. A group of emails sent from one person to the next person to the next person that everybody responds to, if it's about official business, is a meeting. Reply all is the worst thing that was ever invented. Never use reply all on board-related emails, because it goes from you saying, hey, I won't be at this meeting, and someone else will respond and say, but hey, we're going to talk about this subject at that meeting. And someone else says, yes, it's very important. That is a conversation that the public can't see about subject matter you guys have purview over. So reply all is the worst thing. It is really the bane of, it can be the bane of my existence at times. Walking forums, everyone's heard of them. It's when people go out of their way to avoid the Texas Open Meetings Act. You can only personnel that are required to be there that are necessary for the operation. When COVID began, we actually had to do a lot of research to decide whether or not we could allow the tech guy, the IT guy, to be in the room with the mayor during closed sessions, and we finally had to make him wait outside the door. Or when it would not, when they had breakdowns. You have to keep minutes or tape recordings of the open meetings. I was on the Civil Service Board about 4 years ago, and I think they were the last body to have a physical tape recorder, and they switched over to electronic. So minutes are for staff. You guys don't have to keep them, but they are actually far simpler than most people make them. The record of the meeting has to be available to the public. We do that over City Hall takes care of all that. And one fun fact is that the public is allowed to come in and film anything as long as they don't get in the way. Someday there will be a documentary about the development of Henderson Avenue with Fonda and her dad, who have been doing it for 15 years, and it's going to be a great time because I've been. video conferencing. Anne Marie stole most of my thunder on this one, but the story goes that when COVID began, the governor, at the Attorney General's request, suspended certain portions of the Texas Open Meetings Act, which was the only way the cities and counties could actually comply because we were not set up with the technology to have the meetings. The good side of that was that we were allowed to have the meetings, and you saw how everybody stumbled sort of in the space age. The downside to that was that for the last 18 to 20 months, everybody has been very laissez-faire, very lackadaisical with how they've gone through meetings. An unnamed member of an unnamed board does it from her bed. Most people have them, their cameras off. We've all seen all the meetings. Well, the rules didn't change. The rules went back to what they were originally. The governor, again, at the Attorney General's request, September 1st, suspended discrimination. Thanks. And we have to start having these rules. And when you read all the rules together, that's why you have to be on camera the whole time. So we make sure we have a quorum. We're really afraid of losing a quorum. If a quorum goes, we're done. If there's technical problems, we can recess briefly. It's almost like an automatic recess. However, you guys got to stay on camera now. And Reed did a much better job than I could on the whole thing. So now I'll go on to parliamentary procedure, and I'll take questions on the whole thing at the end if anybody has any. Surprisingly, don't have any. The purpose of parliamentary procedure is to protect certain people's rights, but to also make the meeting efficient. Everybody has to have a voice, but you still have to be able to make laws, or still have to be able to have an efficient meeting. There's a guy named Garfield Jones who wrote a great handbook of it, and he summed it up with common sense. It really is the essence of parliamentary rules. Play nice and have a reasonable discussion, and then solve the problem. There's 5 types of motions. The only ones you probably guys really care about are the main motion. That's I move to approve or deny. The subsidiary, which is when you amend it or hold it. Privilege doesn't really come into effect much anymore. That was the, oh my gosh, this room is really hot. You just have to stop right now for a second while I walk outside. Incidental motions is let's suspend the rules. Usually that's probably not you guys, but that is the Board of Adjustment with their evidentiary rules. And reconsideration. Reconsideration is really an important one. If you guys ever want to reconsider something, please let staff know so that they can contact Barbara Martinez so she can contact me, because you can't reconsider something if you don't give people notice you're going to do it. And so if you do it at the next meeting, which you're allowed to do, you got to give notice to be able to talk about it. So it's really important. Reconsideration is always sort of it's one of the tough motions for us, only because of the Texas Open Meetings Act. I think everybody knows that you guys already did your motions today, so you all know what the main motion is. You can only withdraw it until it's been restated by the chair. Really important, and this is a rule that's in the Dallas City Code as well, is that debate must be confined to the merits of the motion. You guys are charged with keeping the decorum of the meeting and keeping the meeting running efficiently. So you owe it to the body and really to the public to make sure that the discussion and deliberation is confined to the merits of the motion. In the city of Dallas, you're all required to vote. You have to do yes or no. It's you can't abstain unless you have a conflict of interest. You're not appointed to abstain. Can't really change your vote after the vote is announced unless permission is given by majority. That's actually, I think we may have changed that. The real goal now is as soon as the vote is announced, you got to get everybody to agree on it to change it. First, you can always hold an item to postpone to a time certain or to an event. People always forget that you can hold until an event. I move to hold this item until we get the report back. That's a time certain. It just depends on the event. Amending, you can only have 2 amendments on the floor at any given time. And you can't do a contrary amendment. If I move to approve, you can't amend it by saying I move to deny. You can amend different motions. I'm not going to go through those. You always got to do the amendment first so that you finally vote on the final amended item. Friendly amendments, city-friendly amendments on many boards and commissions are all the rage, and they are very convenient. They allow you to make small modifications. There's really no such thing as a friendly amendment, and our current mayor has pretty much done away with friendly amendments at the city council. The previous mayor was pretty casual with it. I think most boards and commissions do use friendly amendments here to that state. Again, reconsideration, I think I already talked that to death. Any item cannot be reconsidered twice. There's a guerrilla tactic of Robert's rules that if you really want to win something, you vote it, it gets approved, you're on the winning side, you move to reconsider it, you bring up some reason you needed to reconsider it, vote on it again, it can never be reconsidered. It's called clinching the motion. Anyways, here's some important boards and commission parliamentary rules from the City of Dallas Code. Again, you got to limit your debate to the questions under consideration. You only speak to the chair, not to other members without the chair's permission. You can only speak on an item one time until everybody else has had the opportunity to speak. And then, according to the Dallas City Code, you could only speak twice on an item and then for no more than 5 minutes. An extension can be granted, but it's a suspension of the rule, so it requires 2/3 of the vote, and I don't know what that is, a 17. Members, again, you must preserve order and decorum, and you obey the orders of the chair and follow the rules of the board. So you're really doing a service to the board if you keep people on track, if the body sort of polices itself. You can only speak when you're recognized by the chair, and once you have the floor, you should not be interrupted. Once the vote is actually done, you can't speak. We get a lot of that in different boards, commissions, where people try to clarify something, but technically it's too late once the vote is started. And much like council and the public and everybody else in the city of Dallas, you can't use indecorous language. You can't make rude or derogatory remarks, and don't go to someone's integrity, talk about abusive comments or their motives. Any member can request a roll call vote, but since you guys are on screen, that's really a voice vote for a roll call vote. If you're present at the meeting but you're absent during the vote, you're considered to have voted yes. If you arrive late, they will try to get you to say what your vote would be, but generally you've already voted yes. And of course, you're required to vote unless there's a conflict of interest. Can't leave without the chair's permission. And again, if the behavior or the debate has gone off the rails, you can ask the chair to enforce the rules, and then Jennifer will throw the person. Members may be removed from the room for failure to comply. It's sort of an odd thing now that some of you are virtual. There are ways to appeal the ruling of the chair. The body really does control what goes on, so the chair can be overruled. But it's sort of a cumbersome process, but it can be done. And of course, it defaults to Robert's Rules of Order. City staff, media, public, everyone has to follow the same rules you guys do. There's a couple questions. If there is a conflict, do you use a quorum? No. This doesn't really apply in a virtual setting, but in City Hall it does. I don't know where it came from, but the recused person has to stay in the building. We have literally chased people down in City Hall to make sure they didn't leave the building. If no one makes a motion, the item fails. Status quo is preserved. If you have a tie vote, motion fails. Status quo is preserved. You have to actually make an affirmative act to make things happen. Can you have discussion before a motion is made? Really, you should not. You can only ask questions. Our mayor is very good about that, about requiring a motion, they do a motion to approve, and then they start talking. Does the chair get to vote? A lot of people ask that question. Yes. In the city of Dallas, the chair absolutely gets to vote. They can actually make a motion. And probably the most important slide in both sets of slides today is that if you don't know what the answer is, the chair should make a ruling that preserves order, allows everyone to speak, and allows the body to officially reach a decision. If no one objects, you're doing just fine. And that goes back to the old Garfield Jones, play nice, play fair, and get business done for the public and for you guys, so you don't stay there the whole time just in circles. And with that, I will stop sharing. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And if you guys have any questions you think of later, feel free to reach out to Jennifer and she can get in touch with
I
me.
know how to find him.
Yes.
Questions, comments? This is great.
Got one.
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, I was waiting to be recognized by the chair. Yeah, you talked about, we talked earlier about turning off your camera when you recuse yourself. It says in all the written stuff that you cannot do that even for that. So would it be better to do that just briefly to recuse, or turn around, or leave the camera, or what?
You should turn off the camera and mute yourself. And if you could not listen, you will not be considered absent. You will not break the quorum. You won't break the quorum for purposes of TOMA or for purposes of Robert's rules. Again, if you're just stepping away for a second, much like the council members, you know, they get up and toddle off from the horseshoe all the time, but you know, they come right back. So that's fine. But for recusal, yeah, try to close shop for just a second.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mr. Van Der. Thank you. Okay, moving right along here at, still on the briefings, we're going to go to cultural spotlight at this meeting is the Salmon Center for the Arts. And we're fortunate today to have Ms. Joanna St. Angelo, who is the executive director of the center, and she is with Anna Garcia, which is the director of development. Would you please come forward and do your presentation at this time? Thank you for coming. You're on mute.
Thank you so much for having us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, we're very excited to finally be moving forward on a project that we have hoped to do for many years, which is an expansion to a second facility, which we frequently have called Salmons 2 in the past. And we've had a unique opportunity through the opportunity to ground lease a piece of vacant property with the city of Dallas. So this is another public-private partnership, just like the one that we've originally done with the old Turtle Creek Pump Station. Next slide, please. I'm assuming most of you know about the Salmon Center for the Arts, that we are an arts incubator and a performing arts center. We have been around and open for 33 years of growing the arts, and we house 15 resident arts groups of every discipline, and we serve another 100 small and mid-sized arts groups with rehearsals, meetings, and so on. We provide office space, rehearsal space, performance space, meeting space, and other resources. We also produce a concert series, Salmon's Jazz, which is the longest running jazz series in the Metroplex. And we started a cabaret series in 2012, and we do other unique performances. We use only local artists for the most part, so that's something we're very proud of. Everything we do is focused on Dallas and the arts groups and artists of Dallas. Next slide. So you might ask, why would anyone want to take on an expensive, difficult, challenging, complex project in the pandemic? And this is why. And it's because we've been at maximum capacity for quite a few years. We have a waiting list of groups for our office space. We have limits on the types of groups we can serve. We have not been able to really do much to help the visual arts community here. The alternative spaces that are available for our small and mid-sized groups either don't really fit their needs or they're just too expensive. And then an external reason is that we know in the Dallas Cultural Plan that the need for additional space was one of the key priorities. So this project will help to meet one of those key priorities with the cultural plan. Next slide. So where we are right now is really at the beginning stages, and what we've done so far. At the very beginning, when we first learned of this piece of property, that was back in 2017, the first thing we felt we needed to do was have some key partners that represented each discipline, theater, dance, music, and visual arts, so that we could have them really work with us to define very broadly what the needs of the artists and arts groups would be for a second facility. So we did that, and we got a little grant and got a consultant to help us create a preliminary needs assessment. And we used that needs assessment to create a basic architectural program. And then we started in late 2019 a procurement process with the City of Dallas, which took quite a long time, mainly because of the pandemic issues. That was finalized in May when it was voted on and approved by the Dallas City Council, which approved a ground lease with the Salmon Center for this piece of property. And so now we are just at the very end of completing a survey of the performing arts and arts groups in Dallas. We literally just wrapped that up last week. We sent that out to 189 groups. We had about a 39% participation, and that will give us a lot of information about where they are now and how things have changed due to the pandemic and how they see things shaping up in the future. Next slide. The key partners were Carmia Theater Company representing theater, Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra representing music and youth, the Creative Arts Center representing the visual artists, and Brucewood Dance representing the dance groups. And this was very, very critical to making sure we were really on the right track and thinking outside the box about what everybody's going to need and how much of that we can fit into this new space. Next slide. I want to stress that what you're seeing on the screen right now is not an actual representation of what we're going to build. This is just a preliminary sketch by some architects of how things might be massed on the site. So this particular piece of property is located adjacent to Stemmons Freeway at Commonwealth, just south of Mockingbird. It is in West Dallas. It is an industrial commercial area. There's really not anything else around there except a lot of warehouses. A lot of people have said that it's in the design district, but it's really not. It's several miles north of the design district. It was a piece of property that was purchased for the Trinity Parkway project, and when that was canceled in 2017, it became surplus property. And it's just completely empty right now. There's nothing on it, but it does provide a really great opportunity to develop things that are specific to the needs of the arts groups. So what we hope to build there is another arts incubator, something probably larger than what we have here at this current facility, which we will be keeping. And then we want to include a Blackbox theater, one or more Blackbox theaters. It depends on what can fit on the site. And then something else we really want to address is the need for affordable live-work space for artists. There are many artists who can't afford to live in Dallas because of the high costs and just lack of the right type of live-work space. So that's a really important piece of this whole concept, is to have the ability to do that. That will require a zoning change. So it's, but it is one of the very important elements of what we hope to do. Next slide. And this is kind of an expanded view of what a large facility might look like. It'd probably be a multi-story. And one thing you'll notice is we hope to have plenty of parking. And for those of you that have been to the Salmon Center, you know that's a really critical thing here. It has been a limitation for all of the groups who use this facility. Next slide. So the next steps, over the next few months, we want to do another survey of the visual artists in our community, make sure that we understand their needs and compile and analyze their results. And then a really critically important piece is the community engagement piece, excuse me. And we want to make sure that we're respectful and careful about including the West Dallas community, their stakeholders and leaders, excuse me, and that what we build fits their vision for their community. So we will be building a West Dallas Advisory Committee, and we're working with the council member for the district, Council Member Omar Narvaez, for that. We want to make sure that we're communicating with them throughout the process so that we're very careful and respectful and are building something that really fits in with what the community wants and needs. We feel like that's really an important piece of the project that sometimes gets forgotten. And because we have always tried to be sensitive to the needs of the people around us, we just felt like that was a critical next step for us. And then with that piece in place and their feedback and all of the survey information from both the visual arts and the performing arts, we can use that then to adjust the architectural plan and actually create a real conceptual plan that we will be able to bring back to our key partners, to our advisory committee, to the community leaders, and also to you, the cultural affairs commissioners and the people at the Office of Arts and Culture. Next slide. And before I take questions, I know probably a lot of you have questions about a timeline for this, and we don't have a real solid timeline yet because, a lot of it depends on how fast we can raise the money and how extensive the project will be. We feel like probably 10 years to complete everything we want to do, but we hope that we can create the incubator within about 3 years, maybe breaking ground late in 2022, and then completing it in early 2024. And this will probably be a phased development, but it's, if the money is available, then we will be able to do things concurrently. So I'd be happy to take questions if anyone has any.
Joanne, this is Jesse. I have information I would like for you to share. I know I have an idea how you're looking at funding this project. I think the commissioners, if you could go into a little more depth about that, and also include your experience at the Salmon Center to kind of let them know that you have some experience in this area.
Sure. Well, obviously, we'll be doing a big capital campaign, and we'll be looking for foundation grants. We'll be looking for naming rights. We'll be looking for a lot of individual grants. It's the usual combination of all of the funding sources that go in. I do want to stress that we're not asking the City of Dallas for funding for this. The city is providing the property, and the lease agreement that we have is basically says that just like we did here at this facility, we raised the money to renovate and operate it. We will do the same thing with this new facility. So this will not be another facility to burden the City of Dallas with a lot of cost, both for development and for operations.
That's great.
Hi, Joanna, this is Vicki. I'm just curious. Hi. I'm just curious to know whether or not you are looking at this new space as having some rental fees related to artists living there, and have you thought through what that might look like as a way of getting additional revenue?
Sure. We will, obviously, we will need to charge some rents and fees for all of the facilities, but the live workspace for artists will be built on the affordable housing model. One good thing about this particular piece of property is because of the fact that it's located in a more commercial industrial area, we don't expect any of the NIMBY issues that those kinds of projects sometimes cause. But we do expect this to be housing that would be affordable and it could end up being a mixed retail in terms of maybe having some actual exhibit spaces or gallery spaces within it. Again, we don't know that yet. We do want to get a lot of feedback from the visual arts community about those elements. And then the spaces within the incubator and the Blackbox, of course, those would be available for rent, but also on affordable terms, which has always been our way of doing things.
Thank you, Joanne.
Sure.
Any more comments?
Yeah, so I think I'm one of the few. Can you guys hear me? I got a new computer, so I think I'm one of the few commissioners who has actually officed at the Salmon Center back in 1995 at the Shakespeare Festival. And let me just tell you, magic happens in the incubator space. Arts organizations have the opportunity to collaborate with one another. We borrow from each other. We help each other up. We lift each other up. We celebrate with each other. And it really is something truly magical. And the fact that Dallas will have this, that Joanna and I were reminiscing that I don't think any other city has something of this caliber. And this is really something super special that we all need to take pride in and rejoice in. Joanna, I remember for the last 30 years, you have been talking about Salmon's 2, Salmon's 2, Salmon's 2. And for it to finally happen, it's just so exciting. And thank you so much for your leadership and your dedication to the arts in Dallas.
Well, Joe, thank you. And I agree with you. There's a lot of cross-pollination that happens here. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest benefits for the groups that come here and use the facility is the opportunity to work with the other groups and collaborate and learn from and help each other out. And we want to make sure we instill that same ethic in any facilities that we might develop. And we are very thankful to the city of Dallas as well for this opportunity. This is an absolutely wonderful opportunity for us to expand in a way that we think will have maximum benefit for all of the arts and artists in Dallas.
Joanna, it's Vicki again. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited that you're including the visual arts this time, because so rarely do we get an opportunity to have that kind of cross-pollination with performing arts groups. So that it would be fabulous to have all of those elements together.
Well, we have felt for a long time that the visual artists in this community really have not had the same, opportunities and attention that the performing arts have had, and that's something we always wanted to make sure that we would include if we had the chance. So now we do, and we definitely want that to be an important part.
I had a question. Ms. DeMonic.
Yes. Mr. Dunn.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So how can, I know you said that, this isn't something you're looking for from the city of Dallas, but how can we, and I'll perhaps selfishly ask, how can, in District 6, how can we support you both in telling the story and in continuing to make sure that the work that you guys are doing now and the work that you guys are doing for Salmons 2 is widely known, is widely supported, and is advocated for through whatever means and resources that we have at our disposal? What are there ways that we can support you in telling that story?
Sure. And well, first of all, I hope that you'll be part of our committee, our advisory committee, since you are the representative for District 6. We'd love to have your input on that. And then I think I will just designate each and every one of the commissioners right now to be ambassadors for this project. So, as you're talking to people in the community, I think just stressing how important it is. It's great that we have the Arts District. We love the Arts District. It's a wonderful thing for Dallas, but we need now to have other facilities and resources available in other parts of Dallas. And this is a good, good first step towards expanding into areas that really are underrepresented with cultural assets. So I think it's real important to make sure that everyone, whether that's the press or that's the funders or that city leaders, know that this is a really, really important thing for the city. And it needs the same kind of support that has been given in the past to other important arts initiatives.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much for coming in today and sharing your vision and where you're going with this and your support of the Dallas cultural community. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and tell you about it, and we'll be back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anne-Marie, would you now move forward with the Dallas budget update?
Yes, and maybe I'll just come sit here. So not. Is Lynn gonna drive? Yeah. Lynn, would you mind going more to slide? Thank you. So we can go forward one more. Thank you. Okay, so the exciting news, we have a budget. The city has
Yeah.
passed its budget yesterday, city council. We're very excited. There was one amendment, so our budget has changed a little bit from when we talked to you last month. There was a council amendment to increase resources for our department, which we're very grateful for, from the American Rescue Plan Act funds, ARPA, which the city is getting about $300 million over the course of the next 3 years. $550,000 of that's for one-time facilities and upgrades. We always have needs at our cultural centers. Dance floors are more expensive. You have mirrored walls. You have a lot of things that are much more expensive than normal city buildings. And then we also have opportunities such as the prison building in the International Cultural District. And seeing if there's other ways we can use places like West Dallas Multi-Purpose Center for more cultural activities. There is also $325,000 to put 5 library Blackbox theaters across Dallas. Kudos to Commissioner Blaze, who worked so much with us on this almost 2 years ago. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. This was identified as part of the cultural plan funding. We'll get more into that in just a minute. And then really excitingly, there's also $125,000 for artist residencies at our cultural centers, which is essentially another increase for cultural programming at our cultural centers and in Thomas. And I personally want to commend Anne Marie. This has been one of the longest budget processes. I think she had to start last January, the day we came back from the holidays. It's extremely complex because of all of the federal money that is highly qualified, has different deadlines, and it's a good thing to have federal money, but it made a general fund budget inordinately more complicated. So I really want to thank Anne Marie because it was crazy. So thank you on behalf of all of us. And again, of course, the $1 million is welcome. Now we gotta go spend it. So Glenn, if you go to the next slide. So this is a library Blackbox theater, and I don't believe we had over half the commission change over since we last talked about this. So this may be good repetitive music to some of your ears. The 5 library Blackboxes were built over the course of 10 years across the city. This idea of let's make the libraries also cultural centers. In some cases, they were just a carpeted room with large conventions with the walls painted black. Which we all know working theaters need a lot more than just black walls. Some of them were a little more equipped. Commissioner Blaze, I can see you agreeing. But the plan is to equip them so they're flexible, so they can serve multiple uses, and we can use with all levels of arts organizations, address that space problem through the city. For anything that requires construction, we'd be working with the libraries on the schedule of construction. We have to kind of also deal with procurement, also deal with all these things, but we have a few years to spend the ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act funding, but not to say that we aren't putting the greatest priority on that. I had one of our managers ask me, when are we gonna start doing this? Is this like something where we need to get it spent tomorrow? And I was like, no, we don't, but because of back orders and because of delays, let's get on this on October 1st. As soon as we have the money, let's start specking out, let's start figuring out how we procure these things. And then we'll of course be publicizing it and using things like Space Finder, our space finding app for that, so that people can find out about these spaces and using these spaces ourselves, and working with the library to keep them open later so that groups can use them for theater performances, for rehearsals, for dance rehearsals and dance classes, to continue utilizing these spaces more and more. Next slide, please. And this is just the map, which shows you how spread across the city they are. We went through, we said, okay, these are all 5 of them. They are amazingly diverse. So I think probably performed in all of them. I know a few years ago, one of the groups did Freedman's Town to Elton John and toured all 5 of them. I think many of our theater groups have also toured many of them. So we're just looking forward to getting these up and running at real professional capacity. Most of them are in peak typologies, which is the residential arts, and a couple of them are in blue or the urban arts typologies. And there's more details about what our plans are, what the needs are, and how we plan to equip these spaces in the appendix, but I won't go into that, and Commissioner Blaze certainly knows more about it than I do.
Then I think next slide, and that is it for me.
Ms.
Uh,
Woodley?
I believe that Ryan Flores and I had both suggested that we be consistent with the types of equipment that goes into these spaces. And I would just like to confirm that that is what's going to happen, because groups that are touring from one to the other, to the other, to the other, will find it much easier if they can use their same light cues and sound cues and that sort of stuff. Yes?
Yes, we can confirm. Ryan Flores will be still working on this project, much to our gratitude.
This is Commissioner Meek. I have a question about the money that was put aside for facilities, cultural facilities, city facilities. I know that what the Beckles Dancing Company's president was going to talk about is the South Dallas Cultural Center. And I just want to know if that money is going to be able to make that dance studio and all the other stuff that seems to have been messed up during the storm get repaired in a timely fashion. I mean, it's already been months, but you know.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Meek. Nikki Christmas, who is our facilities manager, was actually there today, and I saw her just turn her camera on. And we are sorry that not Morris, but Dudley from the Beckles Company was unable to get on. Nikki, do you want to give a quick update on that? Because obviously that is a pressing facilities need right now, and it doesn't need to wait for this funding.
Sure. So this project is not dependent on the funding, the budget that Anne-Marie just discussed, that it is actually already underway. And so I don't want to talk too much because I know we're not supposed to be talking about that, but at the same time, the budget funding, the budget that Anne-Marie is discussing now, the budget has already been set for the South Dallas Cultural Center and repairing that flooring in the dance studio.
Meaning we have the resources already before we go into next fiscal year.
Yes, correct.
We're waiting for equipment and building services.
And is it slated to be finished in time for them to do the South Dallas Dance Festival?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the limiting factor now that we have the money, and thank goodness it's in a multi-year, which means I don't have to spend it all next year, is really procurement. Lead times, as I kind of mentioned, on chips, anything with a microchip, there's a lot of supply chain issues related to the pandemic and other manufacturing things. So we are working as quickly as possible to basically sit up and wait for a lot of work, and the city's experiencing problems with labor shortages in some places, and so we're all working through this. The wonderful thing is we have the money and we are determined and very, very dedicated to getting it spent out. I wish we could make it happen yet like this, but unfortunately government procurement does not quite work that way.
It happens to me as a private citizen too.
So it's we are very excited to announce that we have the money, and the money is the first step because nobody will do anything for us unless we have the money. And now we can keep all the wheels working in boring ways that I want to bore you with.
I have a quick question about the black boxes in the libraries. So I know some of them were kind of partially equipped and others had nothing. Are you going to be replacing everything that's existing in the ones that were kind of partially equipped so that everything matches in all 5 of them? Or are you looking at keeping some of the equipment and just making sure that they'll all, whatever's running all that equipment will be compatible with the other ones?
Great question. The preliminary bids that are now a couple of years old, so we've actually increased it about $75,000, did not include replacing everything. It did include standardizing to the extent possible. So very much in keeping with what Commissioner Blaze said, but I think one of them was fairly new. I want to say Express, but don't put me on that. And obviously we're not going to tear out perfectly good equipment if it's working, but some of them were basically not functioning at all. So it's really about bringing up the lowest performers.
Okay, no more questions or comments with reference to the budget update? Then we'll move on to Glenn. On the cultural organization programs allocation recommendation briefing.
Great, can you hear me? Great. All right, so we are bringing, how does this work? There we go. We're going to bring two different items to you today, but let's talk about our FY 21-22 Cultural Organizations Program allocation. A little bit of background. This is our operational funding program, right? Where we're giving, where we're allocating funds to our Dallas-based established arts and cultural organizations. Through our application process, actually, first, I need to shout out to our Allocations Committee for all of the work that they did this summer in helping us get this item to you as a full body as commissioned today. We had 52 applicants in this, this particular round for the upcoming year, 43 of whom have been recommended for funding that you are going to consider today. 36 of those 43 are returning organizations. So that's all of the organizations that are in the current program this year, including the African American Museum and Dallas Historical Society, just for context. 8 of those 36 organizations self-identify as Alana. We are also bringing forth recommendations for 7 new organizations, 3 of whom self-identify as Alana, and they are starred in this list right after. All of these organizations are what we consider Tier 1 organizations whose budgets are between $100,000 and $500,000. And so those 7 organizations are Avant Chamber Ballet, Color Me Empowered, Deep Vellum Publishing, Pegasus Musical Society, which we more commonly know as the Orchestra of New Spain, the Flame Foundation, the Women's Chorus of Dallas, and the Verdigris Ensemble. Just sort of as, I don't know if you know this, but just sort of as this really great point in general, is all of the organizations that we funded in this current year, 2020 to 21, are still operational. They're recommended for funding this next year, and they continue to produce our much needed year-round services for our Dallas residents and visitors. I just think it's a really good and poignant thing to know that our organizations really, really did the work this past year to maintain their status as organizations and moving forward. And so I'm really, really proud of our ecosystem and of our organizations that we get to, in some way, help and support through this program. Looking at our FY 21-22 COP budget, we are seeing a little bit of about a 4.4% growth from last year. So our total budget of $5,160,176. And then all of these contracts are scheduled to go before City Council October 27 after you as Commission make your recommendation today. So looking at voting item number 3, this is the specific FY 21-22 COP allocation. And so this list is just in alphabetical order and along with the funding amount of recommendation. Anyone with an asterisk by their name is a new organization to the program. Some of these names, all of these names, are listed as they are registered with the state of Texas to conduct business. And so some of them may not be familiar. And I've tried to point out which ones those are in parentheses. Tico Theatrical Productions is the Bishop Arts Theater Center. Dallas County Heritage Village, Heritage Society is the Heritage Village at Old Park City. Foundation for African American Art is the African American Museum. And Pegasus Musical Society is Orchestra of New Spain. I'll stand here for just a second. I believe all of this is in your packet as well with the AIS.
Okay.
Did you want me to go ahead and move on to item 4?
Well, we can vote on the first, why don't we go all the way through and we'll go back to voting? Okay. Okay.
So go on to number 4?
Yes.
Great, okay. So looking at FY 22-23, this will be our voting item number 4 today, which is related to our 21-22 COP allocation. So this is a resolution for you as Commission to consider today. So due to budget declines in both the Black Academy of Arts and Letters and Anita Martinez Ballet Folklorico, they are being recommended with a funding adjustment in accordance with our city council approved guidelines, right? So these were the guidelines that we approved back at the beginning of this year before we went through this whole process that you as commission saw, and that then went to city council for their final approval. And so as a refresher, COP, the support that we give any organization through COP cannot be any more than, depending on the budget size, either 25% of an organization's budget if they are under $1 million, 15 if they're between $1 million and $5 million, and then 10% of their budget if they're above $5 million, right? And so we have to stick to those particular funding limits for those organizations through COP. And then as city support as a whole, any organization under $1 million, we are able to support up to 50% of that organization's budget. Any organization over $1 million, I believe it is 40% of their budget. So our recommendation for T-ball for 21-22 was that $186,450 amount. This is an adjustment because of the decline in their budget of $15,730. And then OAC and this as city support in total remain 43% of their budget as reported in their most recent completed fiscal year. For Anita Martinez, we are recommending for this upcoming fiscal year, $53,250, which is a $17,383 adjustment. And then again, overall in total city support, we're looking at, we are 31% of their total budget. Both of those figures you're seeing right there are 25% of their budget through COP. So they have hit that funding limit through COP. So we, of course, as staff understand the impact that any sort of adjustment like this makes on an organization. So we've followed up and communicated with both organizations and had a lot of discussion with our Allocations Committee. And as a result, a resolution was drafted to help organizations continue to thrive and provide programming by special consideration for the following fiscal year. So that's why we're looking at FY 22-23, right, for COP. So this resolution was unanimously approved by the Allocations Committee back in August. And just sort of to summate what this resolution is, so this is for our future 22-23 COP funding increases, specifically recommending for T-Ball and Anita Martinez, right? So we're looking at any increases in contracts or any recommendation increases will be allocated to T-Ball and Anita Martinez first, subject to an increase in their demonstrated revenues in their Form 990 or their audited financial statements. So essentially, as their revenues grow, we will continue to grow their support back up to essentially previous amounts, right? And then on top of that, any other increases in 22-23 COP, any increases in that recommended funding will be made with special consideration to organizations with a history of presenting Alana cultural traditions in line with cultural policy of the City of Dallas, OAC's cultural equity statement, and our equity goals for the Dallas Cultural Plan. Okay, so overall, we are still we still have some concerns over some remaining compliance issues that we're having with Anita Martinez with their current audit requirements and submitting their audit. We're working with them closely and communicating and trying to get those updated financials from them to really make sure that we're in lockstep with our organizations through this process to make sure that everything is as transparent as possible as we move forward. Their audit was originally due back in March. We gave an extension to all of our COP organizations, understanding the circumstance that we're in, to make their audit due a little bit later back in May. And so we're still working with them to try to get those updated financials with them, just to give a little bit more context and information to you as a commission. And I think that's it for me. So I will.
Okay, are there any questions for Glenn at this time?
This is Mr. Meek. I have a question. Glenn, I just want to clarify, when you were making comment about the Alana organizations, you said there were 7. Is that all of them, or?
No, ma'am. There's 7 new organizations, 3 of whom are self-identified as Alana.
Okay, who are those? Because I'm looking at the list and I'm not seeing them.
Those are Pegasus Musical Society, so Orchestra New Spain, the Flame Foundation, and the Verdigris Ensemble, as they have self-identified.
There's an asterisk on the slide next to the names of the 3 new Alana organizations. Is your question?
Yeah, I was looking at them. It's just interesting to me. I didn't know that they were Alana groups. Interesting.
So Glenn, does that bring us to a total, is it 8 plus 3? It brings us to 11?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Basili.
Hi, Chair, permission to speak. This is Commissioner Rice. I just have, I want to make a comment. I'm the liaison for Anita Martinez, and I spoke with them today, and they're making the audit a priority, and I know that OAC has been working with them, so they're turning it in by the end of the week, and they're certainly making it a priority.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, now let's go back to the,
Commissioner Alana.
sorry. I'm sorry. Please. Commissioner. Hello? Yeah.
Commissioner
Thank
Alana.
you. Yeah, having a hard time hearing you, Chair. Thank you. So going back to what Commissioner Meek was asking, I was kind of surprised to see the self-identified. Can you kind of give me more, because it's been a while since I've been a reviewer. How is it that they're self-identifying as Alana? Is it because of the board members, the staff, the repertoire, the performers that they use? How is it that they're self-identifying?
So do you want me to take this question?
Yes,
great.
I just tell Commissioner Jalama that they're supposed to be, if you say you're Alana, it's supposed to be that your mission of your organization is to present, produce, or whatever, traditional work from that cultural group that you're identifying as. So it's really not supposed to be about your board, your staff. It's about the mission of the organization, which is why I was questioning some of this.
So I can answer as far as what's in the application when they're filling it out to self-identify. We're going off of what's in our cultural policy, which by Evan for particularly coming onto it. So we've had this conversation, I believe it's committee, so we on this subject matter. And so we are going off of how an organization is self-identifying and trying not to dictate that for any organization. I know it's a continuing conversation that we will probably have just sort of going on and continuously.
Yes.
Yes, and Commissioner Big, I love your enthusiasm for this, and I know how passionate you are about this and the work that you have done through your career on this. There's a technical definition of what Alana is and what an Alana organization is in the cultural policy. It is not just mission. I think it is about intent by more. We can always pull it up and send it to you. That is what was adopted by the Dallas City Council in 2018. For example, I think TICO, Bishop Arts Theater Center, does not talk specifically about Alana or any of those cultures named. They talk about multicultural. They say that in their mission, but they self-identify as Alana, as well as having boards, staff, and audience that is strongly Alana. And they self-identify, and we say, okay, we accept that, and we self-identify. For the groups, we have very detailed conversations with many of them. In the application, we explicitly put the cultural policy and cultural equity statement up front in the application. We provide the definition from cultural policy as to what Alana is. And we also say, as indicators, strong indicators, board is usually at least 30% Alana, staff is at least 50% Alana, and audience is at least 70% Alana, which reflects the city of Dallas population. So essentially, we don't exclude anybody if they have anyone that doesn't, but we try to strongly lead them to water these are strong indicators. We don't want to exclude anyone just because they're 3% below what one of the recommendations might be. We also do want to trust that organizations have these conversations, that these boards have these conversations, and that they choose, and that we as government are not going to be the ones saying, yes, you are, no, you aren't. There's a bad history of government segmenting people and labeling that I certainly don't want to personally be a part of.
Yes, Mrs. Fairley.
So when they do their COP application, do they qualify? Is there a question where they do qualify why they are identifying that way? Or do they just basically check yes or no?
They respond yes or no, and then follow up with those particular questions. I appreciate that feedback, and I think I know where you're going to go with that, and I think that's a great idea, and we'll follow up on that. Thank you, Commissioner Spelcy.
I think it would just be helpful because I think this question is going to continue to come up, especially as our budget increases and we add more organizations. It would be helpful if when that question comes up, you could basically pull out their application and just read to us. This is what they said. This is why they're identifying that way.
Sure, absolutely.
And some groups, I also think it's important because we went through this last year to note some groups go back to their founding and the original leadership and the way that they see themselves kind of, I think it's really wonderful, like their power base on their board or whatnot. And some groups have decided not to claim that they're Alana, even if their audience and some of those other metrics would have put them in that bucket. So that's one reason why ultimately, if you self-identify, that is where staff is allowing that.
Commissioner Spelcy, I think your suggestion will be really helpful because in theory, based upon what I've heard, any organization could self-identify as Alana. So maybe if we had that information, we could have a more vigorous conversation as commissioners when that occurs.
Okay. Hello. Yes, Commissioner Lolo.
Thank you, Chair. So, and this can be in a follow-up email if somebody wants to do that, but just if I get a question from the community, the arts and culture community, asking why certain organizations have been approved based on their self-identification, how could I best respond to that? You know, any guidance, any tips would be great.
So I think it's
so these were
important to recognize that Allocations Committee met 3 times during this process. And they saw all of the different scenarios that take all of the scoring into account. So to be clear, amongst the 7 organizations, there were organizations that there was actually one that we were all really working with that was Alana, and they just didn't have some of the paperwork in place. So there are organizations that, you know, were Alana, were not Alana. It's one factor among many. So the allocations, and I'm seeing a few allocations members nod their head. I want to be clear because it would be illegal for us to use just Alana as the determining factor. It is a whole body of an application. It's just that for our metrics, we track that so closely and we know it's so important to be relevant to Dallas and to truly serve our community. But the COP application process is really broad, intense, in depth. I think you watched some of the panels. I know I certainly did. Nobody got in or did not based on this one dimension. And I can't stress that enough because that is actually
I would like to, this is Commissioner Meek again. I just want to interject that my concern is not so much about that aspect of, I know that no one is getting in simply because they're Alana. My concern is that if we are truly interested in uplifting the Alana groups, then at some point we have to worry about our own metrics. If we're allowing people to self-identify who clearly have an organization that does not really have any really relationship to the Alana designation.
tradition, yeah.
So this gets very tricky again. Like I said, we, as Jennifer said, we do not take this into consideration. We do not say, are you Alana? Are you not Alana? We can give you funding if you're Alana. If that gets, the attorneys yell at us about that. The new organizations, the 7 organizations who were added because they were scored at 90% or higher. There was an organization, I think in tier 4, that scored at 88%. That was not let in. And all those scores are in your packet in the appendix, as well as they were presented last month. And that's all based on the COP guidelines with 100 points, with 30 administrative, which are all very cut and dry. So Commissioner Halima, I hope that helps answer your questions, which is, it's not based on that either way. It's based on 70 points of resident panel scores and 30 points of completely objective math formula things that administrative scoring that the city does. And Commissioner, I hear what you're saying. However, I think some of these conversations may be better had once they're in COP and there's an allocations or a liaison, and can really work with these organizations to say, tell me about this. Let's have this conversation. And
we can cut the data in January or February, whenever we share our year-end reports, we can cut the data and we can show you on an organizational level, you know, who was funded, who was not. If you include Alana or you don't, we can cut the data however, you know, you want to see it, okay? But whether or not these groups get funded, actually then putting them in, we can dig in and look at, you know, what percent these groups get of funding. But whether or not they're admitted into this program and funded was not necessarily. In fact, that they're Alana is how they self-designated. We don't really take credit for funding.
It was the kind of information provided. However, it is not germane as it to this vote item itself, because it did not impact what allocations did or did not do, and it does not impact any of the recommendations in any material way, shape, or form.
This is Commissioner McGinn. I appreciate, I think it's been well established that this was not the make or break factor for any organization to receive COP funding, and we get that. I think the concern just is that, you know, we have authenticity in our approach to this, and that we don't just pat ourselves on the back and say that we're supporting Alana groups. And we just want to make sure that that's the case. Similar in the environmental space with, you know, greenwashing, that we're not equity washing here. And just reporting out that we're making an impact and that it's happening without there being an authentic impact behind it. So I think we're all in agreement that, you know, it wasn't about the funding going out, but that we actually are making an authentic impact in the Alana space, as opposed to just saying that we are, and that we can document that somehow.
Well said.
Okay. Oh, Bergman, I can see it. Okay. Ms. Bergman?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Commissioner McGeehan expressed my thoughts better than I could have expressed them myself, which is I think it's very important that we not pat ourselves on the back for something. We need to be sure that what we are patting ourselves on the back for is accurate. And I wanted to ask if perhaps, I know we've had this situation come up at least once since I've been on the commission, and perhaps one of the roles as commissioners, one of the ways we can be helpful when we serve as liaisons is working closely with those organizations to encourage accurate self-identification. I know we've had that come up on at least one occasion where an organization has changed its designation. And I think that is one of the ways that we can be helpful, is helping to be sure that our organizations understand the importance of the accuracy of their self-identification.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We are adding language to the contract, just so you all know. Thank you for mentioning liaisons. We've had some really unsettling issues with some of our organizations and the different treatment of liaisons. So we're going to be strengthening the contract language to explain the role better, both for your benefit, for our benefit as a public funder, and I think ultimately for the organization's benefit, just so that there's consistency. Because as you all know, there are certain organizations and you can more easily make their meetings. So you show up, and an organization might get used to their liaison never showing up. So we're going to try to standardize that. And I think that is a critical task is also a really helpful thing for all concerned. So thank you.
Comments? Good. I will turn this over to Ms. Johnson now and set it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to recommend fiscal year 2021-2022 COP allocations as presented. And we do this using seriatim, which is to allow us an opportunity to vote individually, since some of the commissioners will have to be recused from the voting process.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
So now, if Mr. Chair, if I may, parliamentary perspective, if you were here last, you'll remember this. Now we are going to have Glenn read up the split motion so that commissioners can recuse themselves from the items, from the organizations for COP with which they have a conflict of interest. So for each of these, there will be a separate motion. I think there's 6 in total. So we would like somebody to make the motion to approve the FY21 for the list Glenn said, and for there to be a second and there to be a vote on each section of the 43 COP organizations?
Correct.
43 COP organizations. Are there any questions about that procedurally? Okay.
Well, okay.
And I was just going to read these names. Is this something that you would like me to share my screen with so that you can see the list as well as listen to me read it?
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful personally.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Hold, please. I could get an affirmative that we are seeing my screen.
See it.
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. So this is item 3, right? This is our FY21-22 COP funding recommendation allocation. Okay. Do I just start? How does this go?
Glenn, could you read out the organization names and then a commissioner can make the motion?
Great. So we're going to call this item 3A. No one has to recuse themselves because we've received no feedback as far as any sort of conflict of interest. So this particular vote will include the following: Anita N. Martinez, Ballet Folklorico; Avant Chamber Ballet, Inc., Big Thought; Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas; Color Me Empowered; Creative Arts Center of Dallas; Cry Havoc Theater Company; Dallas Black Dance Theater Incorporated; Dallas Chamber Symphony; Dallas County Heritage Society; Dallas Historical Society; Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum; Dallas Museum of Art; Dallas Wind Symphony; Deep Vellum Publishing, Inc., Fine Arts Chamber Players; Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra; Junior Players Guild; Pegasus Musical Society; Perot Museum of Nature and Science; Premier Lone Star Wind Orchestra; Salmon Center for the Arts; Teatro Hispano de Dallas; Tico Theatrical Productions, Inc., Texas International Theatrical Arts Society; Texas Winds Musical Outreach, Inc., the Black Academy of Arts and Letters, Inc., the Bruce Wood Dance Co., Inc., the Flame Foundation, the Verdigris Ensemble, Inc., a Texas nonprofit corporation, the Women's Chorus of Dallas, the Writers Garret, Theater 3, Inc., Turtle Creek Chorale, Inc., Undermain Theater, and the USA Film Festival.
This is Commissioner again. I will make the motion to recommend funding for the previously named organizations.
Second. Commissioner Meek, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
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 Okay, the motion carries. Okay.
Great. Moving to item 3B, this is our second vote. I ask that Commissioner Blaze recuse herself. Great. This item will include Caramia Theater Co., Kitchen Dog Theater Company, the Shakespeare Festival of Dallas.
This
Mr.
is-
Chair, I move to recommend.
This is Commissioner Meek, I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries.
Moving on to item 3C, this is our vote 3. Commissioner Blaze will continue to be recused. I ask that Commissioner Bragalone recuse herself. And we are considering Dallas Children's Theater.
Okay. Is
This
there
is
a
Commissioner
motion?
Daniel. This is Commissioner Daniel. I'm
So moved.
I'll second. Commissioner
Okay.
Trizella.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
Moving on to item 3D, vote 4. Commissioner Blaze may return. Commissioner Bragalone, I ask that you stay recused. We are considering Dallas Theater Center.
I make the motion that we accept Dallas Theater Center.
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Trizilla and second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Wonderful. Moving on to item 3E, Commissioner Bragalone, you may return, please. And then I ask that Commissioner Hornbuckle recuse himself. We will be considering Foundation for African American Art.
Commissioner Hess, I move that we consider.
I will second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think it was Hess and McGee.
Yes.
No.
Can't see.
And it's almost-
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion carries.
Great. Moving on to item 3F, vote 6. Commissioner Hornbuckle may return. I ask that Commissioner Hess recuse himself. And this is for consideration of the Dallas Opera.
I move that we accept Dallas Opera.
Okay, I'll second since Joe moved to do it.
So- Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Wonderful. That is all of the items.
That's it.
How does it feel to allocate $5.2 million? And a big thanks, of course, to the Allocations Committee that met throughout the summer. Thank you to Chair Johnson, and thank you to Glenn and his whole team that coordinated all of those panels over Zoom. I think it set a record for the number of panels in one day. They were, was it 8 minutes or 7 minutes long? But Glenn never looked like it was as challenging as I felt like it must have been. So thank you all so much.
Thanks so much, everyone. Y'all are the best. Okay, sorry.
I just want to, this is Commissioner Meek, I just want to once again thank the staff. I know how hard that is with that staff.
Yeah.
Allocations, y'all did a fabulous job.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
So the groups loved the new format. So I think it might be one of those pandemic silver linings. The groups seemed more relaxed. You could tell oddly, I thought they were going to not like it, but they all were like, we love this new format. It's so intimate, and we'll see. So yes, but Glenn did make it easy. Thank you, Commissioner Meeks, for that.
Commissioner
And
Braga.
the one thing I want to thank the allocation committee and the chair and the staff is for those of you who aren't on allocations. I mean, we take this very, very seriously, and there were hours upon hours of discussion. So thank you, Commission, for trusting the allocations committee with our recommendations.
Chair may I speak?
Mr. Chair, do we need to take action on item number 4 before we move on to resolution?
Yes.
Okay, I move to recommend the resolution as presented.
Second.
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 Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Chair, may I be recognized?
I think Commissioner Bragelin wants to say something.
Yes.
Yes, just a point of how the practice is. When will the organizations be advised of the vote and their allocations? And is it confidential material until the office notifies them, or?
Great question. Oh, sorry. Okay. They have been notified on a preliminary basis because basically they're in budgets too, and they are eagerly awaiting this. So it helps them plan, and information is power. Many of them were overwhelmed. Again, it's a huge relief to have a funder like OAC that might be 20% of your budget stay flat in the middle of a year like this. Let's all be honest. And so we'll send out another email that you all have unanimously approved it. It goes to commission October 27th, if memory died, yeah. And then he will have contracts ready to go. And so if you all could help me work with your organizations that you're the liaison for and make them get their insurance right, make them, believe it or not, the city is not the only people that slow down getting arts organizations paid. It is a two-way relationship. And so on behalf of our staff, if you are hearing the city is slow to pay me, before you get in an email chain with Anne Marie, Glenn, and myself, please ask them, have you completed all of the parts that the organization must submit? Because I even came back one day and asked our staff, why did it take so long to get this agreement going? Well, the artist had sat on the insurance for a month. So we cannot chase down all of these pieces. And so we will be as ready to go October 27th, when I'm sure City Council will follow your recommendation. But it helps tremendously to get these organizations paid, for them to have had all of those pieces ready to go. And I can't stress that enough, because I feel like this is going to be more of a normal year that we're going into. And so I kind of want to set that expectation right now, because I think we're all used to crazy for the last 2 years. And if we can say, we're going to go to contracting ASAP in the new fiscal year, get your pieces ready. So thank you.
So we can share that the commission has approved it and encourage them to get ready.
No amounts were changed, but yeah, get ready to go to contracting, because council will be getting it. Thanks. It's a longer answer than you wanted, but.
Chair, could I make one quick comment?
Yes, Mr. Arnberg.
I wanted to thank all of the members of the Allocations Committee. We had some very, very vigorous conversations, and the staff especially, how they came up to solve a lot of problems. It's amazing to get different people together and we come up with solutions. So thank you so much, and it's an honor to serve with you.
And Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Hornbuckle just stole my script. I was wanting to say as chair that this is the best allocations committee in the whole wide world. And just in case we don't know who you are, will you please wave?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. This script.
These earrings, I never wear hoops for a reason nowadays.
But I thought right now,
Oh,
because I don't believe we considered that in the initial voting.
I'm sorry, what?
Voting item number 5, the Public Art Committee appointments.
Oh, okay. Why don't we finish? Thank you. We will, okay, I was gonna go into my briefing. Anne Marie has reminded me that there is an item still on your voting agenda. So why don't we double back? We have a few names that are recommended additions for appointments on our Public Art Committee. And You can't forget yourself. If you'll recall, for Public Art Committee members, I get a recommendation from Kay Callis and the Public Art Committee that I bring to you all. Today, I would like to reappoint for terms ending on September 30th, 2023, so 2 more years, Philip Collins, who qualifies as both a curator and an artist, and Gerald Lavelle, who qualifies as an artist and an educator. Additionally, I would like to bring forward for new appointment ending on September 30th, 2023, Marion Marshall, who qualifies as an artist and a designer. So I humbly submit these 3 names for service of appointments on the Public Art Committee.
I move we accept the 3 names presented for
Second.
the Public Art Committee.
I second.
Okay, I'll play parliamentary because Philip, okay, I hear a motion from Commissioner Meek. Was there a second?
I can second.
Commissioner Hornbuckle, thank you. I was reading, my head was down. So we have a motion and a second. Any comments?
Yeah, as the chair of the Public Art Committee, I would just like to say we're very excited to welcome the 2 returning members, hopefully, and also the new blood onto the committee. So thank you all.
Are we ready to vote? Yeah, that's what the attorney called us.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion carried.
Wonderful news. Thank you all. Okay, we're now done with our voting items. That's unique. Congrats. I have a really fun briefing today. So thank you. This won't take very long. We sometimes are so focused on the city of Dallas, or at least at the Office of Arts and Culture we are. Every cent and every arts event and artist that we support has to be in Dallas. We sometimes forget that we're part of a much larger national and statewide arts ecosystem. And this was raised very prominently in the Dallas Cultural Plan under sustainability, that Dallas was doing well compared to peer cities for our support from the city. However, we thought we could do better with available funds leveraging cross-sector benefits. It's a lot of words. I won't drag you through all of them, but there were 5 specific initiatives spelled out under strategy number 21 in this area, in this priority area. And, sustainability, every time you talk to art supporters, this is what concerns them. And I think in Glenn's previous slide, not one COP organization or really arts organization that we fund has folded in Dallas. I cannot tell you how unique that is when I am on calls with my peers. Kudos to this community, and it's much larger than just the Office of Arts and Culture. So one of the first wins coming out of the cultural plan, many of you remember, was going after a larger and increasing portion of the hotel occupancy tax. We were far below our peer cities across the state, and boy, did we go after it. And Visit Dallas has become a tremendous partner. And as tourism recovers, this is a huge source of potential growth into the future for arts funding. And the Texas Commission on the Arts has long had a cultural district program. It's about $10 million per biennium. It has fluctuated, but for the last couple of sessions, this has been what it's been. In 2018, when we did the cultural plan, Dallas only had 1 officially recognized cultural district. And the official recognition is the key, because you have to get TCA recognition to be eligible for that funding stream. Houston at that time had 6 cultural districts, and San Antonio had 3. So again, versus our peer cities, we were going, what's up? We have as much good stuff here as some of our other cities. In 2020, early 2020, the Deep Ellum Foundation successfully applied for Deep Ellum to be a recognized cultural district, and that does include the Latino Cultural Center, which we're sitting in today. But these districts are drawn by the applying body. Next slide. It's driving. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. It looked like words. Then there was another big federal bucket of money this year. The Shuttered Venue Operator Grants, for a while we called them Save Our Stages. Senator John Cornyn was part of a bipartisan effort with Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, and they got over $16 billion of relief programs for arts venues. And this is a much broader definition of arts than the Office of Arts and Culture uses. It includes movie theaters. It includes concert promoters. It includes tons and tons and tons of entities. And I think it's really humbling sometimes for me to remember just how much money the federal government can wield. Dallas does really well, the state does really well, but we're a really big state. But the federal government just trumps it all. And Dallas-Fort Worth has really, really competed for these funds. We've gotten almost $250 million. Depending on which list you look at, we're probably 4th or 5th in the country as a metroplex, which is phenomenal for the people who earn a living directly in the arts or in related industries. 25 OAC partners received over $25 million from the first round. If you were a liaison and got an email from me to bug your organization, thank you. Many of them applied after the first deadline and were successful in getting these federal dollars to come to Dallas. And, you know, I am a wonderful nudge, if nothing else. And I think I called some organizations who chose not to apply. They felt like they could do better going after more PPP, for example, than this funding. Also, you had to have fixed seating, and unfortunately that didn't work for some arts organizations or other groups. It was through the Small Business Administration, so they went through a entity. SBA was not used to working with arts organizations. The application process was thorny, to say the least, but the results have been tremendous. We had a group get less than $2,000, and kudos to them for going through this. Dallas Summer Musicals, their 2019 included Hamilton, so they had the high water mark as a source of comparison, and they were the #1 in terms of funds received with over $9 million. And then kudos to Anne-Marie and Liz Ackland on our team for applying. So we were in the trenches with our arts organizations. We received just over $1 million for support at the Moody, Majestic, and Latino Cultural Center. Our 3 biggest performing arts venues. Again, this $1 million makes a real difference in a general fund budget year like this. There's still some available SBA money. I know a couple of groups have pending applications for the second round. We'll see how that goes. And again, you know, thank you all. If you got questions, there were several last minute emails to get every last application in that we possibly can. Next slide. So for TCA, this is extraordinary. For the first time ever, Dallas arts organizations broke $1 million, which is just, this is manna from heaven. And we want state dollars spent in Dallas, right? Even more importantly, the Dallas Arts District, and I have to give Commissioner Spelcy, and I'm sorry, the tiles keep moving around, but a couple of years ago, or a year ago, he is a liaison to the Chamber Symphony. They present their season at the Moody, and they said, well, we want to be recognized as a resident company. And because the Dallas Arts District had not looked at all of the various users of Arts District facilities in a while, we were able to add to the list and make it a much more robust and diverse list in terms of sizes of organizations, ages of organizations. So we had 8 new organizations apply, and they were tremendously successful, had a really positive experience, and received a quarter of the funding that came to Dallas. What's really exciting is the Deep Ellum Foundation applied for a project in Deep Ellum. They got over $100,000. And after January 1st, when we will have 2 new official resident companies of the Latino Cultural Center, Blue Academia and Teatro will be eligible. So it's really a case of growing the pie, growing our capacity to go after all of these new funding streams. And then last but not least, next slide. Next slide. Glenn, next slide, please. See, it's moving up. Glenn, did we lose you? There you go. I emailed you all the day that this became public, and there was a big press release. There's been some great media. We all know the original cultural district in Dallas was Fair Park, right? And because of a history of disinvestment and some false starts with their designation application, there had been a delay in getting this designation. And kudos to the Fair Park First team. If you see Aletta Lill or Brian Llewellyn or John Spriggans, they put together a just beautiful application. And we're very thoughtful in the boundaries that were drawn. It does include the Forest Theater, which is being renovated. It's actually called Forest Forward, is the organization. And it includes a lot of City of Dallas assets. So it's much bigger than Fair Park. It's being referred to currently as Fair Park South Dallas. And there's also obviously the organizations that you just voted on in COP, Summer Musicals, Historic, Hall of State, Dallas Historical Society, and the African American Museum. They can now apply for this funding. So again, we have 5 new eligible organizations. And so we're at 3 recognized TCA cultural districts. And, you know, I think I see one more potentially on the horizon. If you have any questions, another thing, if you have ties to small towns, I do think it's really fun to look on the state website for Commission on the Arts, because if you're ever going through small towns, this will be like the whole downtown of a small town will be deemed a cultural district, and it's kind of fun to look at our statewide peers in this program. So it's one of those, it celebrates a lot of really worthy stuff. Any questions, comments? Ms. Trizilla?
Well, congratulations.
Oh, I mean, this is one of those, I'm celebrating other people's good work, and I think it's very much in line with the cultural thing. I saw Commissioner Trezilla's hand, and then Commissioner.
So I have a couple of things. One, I want to personally congratulate and thank Chris Heimbach and Joanna St. Angelo for their endless work of getting hot tax. They worked exceptionally hard in making sure that that was included. So that's number one. And number two, insofar as the cultural districts, what is the typical norm for a major city such as Dallas in comparison to other major cities with cultural districts?
It's a great question. There's now 51 across the state of Texas, okay? So, you know, we're a huge state. They had 3 new ones that were acknowledged this year, Laredo, West San Antonio, and Fair Park. Austin only has 2, but San Antonio now has 4 and Houston has 7. So, you know, there's a range. And I think it doesn't in any way, I don't think there's any magic number, but I don't like areas that the key are these organizing partners, because there's the application and then you have to have an administrator who keeps the paperwork and back-end administratively going. And so the Deep Ellum Foundation, Fair Park First, and Dallas Arts District are really key. We are members as well of the Texans for the Arts, and they've been a tremendous partner in fighting for this funding. And so we want TCA's funding to stay, you know, intact, so that there's still value in going out.
This is Commissioner Meek. Joe, I'll also tell you, I sat on that 1 year on that panel to select cultural districts. And it has a lot to do with how you can engage people to actually want to go through the process. And it's not an easy process. So that's the other side of it, is that, you know, we sometimes in Dallas don't go after those things because we've got so much, and we don't necessarily think that, well, you know, we ought to have a cultural district designate. But now we know that it's valuable from a tourism standpoint to have those districts designated. And so it's, you know, it's worth our while to make the effort to do it.
Mr. Hornbuckle.
How does the funding work? Does the individual organizations, once they have the designation, does the individual organization applies for it, or is there the money is pooled together? How does it work?
So great question. They applied, and several of them did come to us and ask for letters of support. So we will do that if it's a project that has, you know, if it accretes to our goals, say for Arts Activate, or it activates another community partner. We've done a couple of letters of support. Same with the NEA. If they very much apply, and I think a lot of the groups that were new were pleasantly surprised with how successful they were. So may it continue. And then I think, you know, it is one of those, it'll be interesting to see if we can continue this. But the other thing that's really important, and Commissioner Meek mentioned hotel occupancy tax. Once an arts organization is in a cultural district, it's automatically eligible for HOT. So as the hotel occupancy tax grows, we now have more and more organizations that can use that funding. Before, it was a harder justification to spend it, you know, outside of just the Dallas Arts District, frankly. So money's fungible. We can always figure it out on the back end, but it really does help us continue to push on cultural tourism and on this events.
And is the money a fixed amount, or is it money that's coming in perpetuity?
Are you talking about the cultural district funding?
Correct, from the state.
It fluctuates.
It fluctuates. And I think maybe 8 years ago, it was cut dramatically. And the Texans for the Arts fought to get it back. And we were very, very, very worried about it in the last session in Austin, and it's maintained. But you know, if you have an organization that is a member of Texans for the Arts, you know, you might want to ask, because they have some really great information. But it looks like it's been that $10 million at least 4 years, if memory serves.
This is Commissioner Meek again, and I just obviously am very excited about the Fair Park South Dallas Cultural District.
Do, right, Commissioner?
Me
Yeah,
too.
that's something that I had talked about like eons ago, and we just never thought it would ever happen, but here it is. So I'm so excited.
And I appreciate you talking about how complex it is, because you want to draw these broader boundaries, but the broader the boundary gets, the harder it is to wrinkle the application. And I think that that's what had kind of stymied us. So thank you for those words. Okay, and then we have one more briefing for you, Benjamin. He's top and center for me. I'm going to turn it over to him. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, everybody, and I'll let him tell you all the good things we have planned.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. So, as we all know, Hispanic Heritage Month kicked off last week. It's from September 15th to October 15th, and the cultural centers have a diversity of programming for Hispanic Heritage Month. I'll start with the Oak Cliff Cultural Center. So this Saturday at 2 p.m., they're going to have a Talavera tile workshop. Iris Bechtel, who is our new visual arts coordinator at the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, will be leading that. And then on October 2nd, we are going to have a hand lettering and grip tape workshop with Sarah Ayala and Raul Rodriguez. Ayala will be teaching hand lettering, and then Raul Rodriguez, who was in an exhibit here at the Latino Cultural Center, and then that exhibit went to the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, and he's a photographer, will be teaching how to use grip tape for skateboarders. Also, that day at 5 p.m., there'll be a tacita candle and yoga workshop, so you get to create your own candle and then practice meditation and do yoga that day. Now, at my home base, or former home base, at the LCC, we have a wonderful exhibit going on called Nuestro Oak Cliff that actually opened up last night. And Caramia Theater Company also was doing a preview of their upcoming festival, Latinidades. And so every part of the building was being utilized, which was actually beautiful to see the Blackbox, the new courtyard, the galleries, the plaza, and the auditorium all being utilized. We had over 400 people here last night. And so that exhibit runs through October 14th. We have our upcoming Art Mart Festival. We actually call it La Pulguita de Arte. Pulguita is Spanish for flea or flea market. So please come by and visit us Saturday. And then we have an upcoming film by local documentary filmmaker Ebony Johnson on Nuestro Cliff and what's been happening and the effects of gentrification. And then I think it's really important to always remember our history, and lectures are really important. So we will have the incomparable Dr. Michael Hinojosa, who has been a superintendent of Dallas ISD not once, but twice. So he definitely is a wonderful human being who is an educator and who is homegrown in Oak Cliff. And then through Community Arts and CAP, we will have 2 performances, one on 10/2 at 1 p.m. Anita Martinez will be performing at the Kleberg Riley Library. And then on 10/7, Mitsoko Chili Yapchil, I'm killing it, performance will be at Hall Personalized Learning Academy. So please join us for those events, and there are many more, so please feel free to check out any of the Cultural Center's websites for further Hispanic Heritage Month programs. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Any questions?
Then I think we just have one housekeeping slide. We will be briefing the Quality of Life Committee to Commissioner Bragalone's earlier question about where did these recommendations go. Just before we go to council, we will be briefing the Quality of Life Committee on their recommendations so that we get their endorsement before the whole item goes to council. That same meeting, Visit Dallas has been working on a cultural tourism plan, and they will be briefing that as well. And I've seen bits and previews, but I'm actually really excited for that as well. There's no public art committee the first week of October, and we will see you all again. By the way, it feels like forever since we've met because we were pushed back a week. So we'll be back on a normal schedule of October 21st. We have a couple of more new commissioners we're getting trained, but we'll be starting the new fiscal year on October 21st. A couple of really fun things that are coming up. Visit Dallas and the Film Commission office is now the Office of Creative Industries, and they have worked to get a music-friendly designation from the governor's music office. The press conference on that will be next Wednesday morning. Keys Park is dedicating finally after several COVID delays the Stevie Ray Vaughan Memorial Piece at Keys Park on Sunday afternoon. And then last but certainly not least, our artists and arts organizations have that weekend to finish their Arts Activate Round 2 applications, and it closes that Monday. So please help anyone you know working on applications to not miss that, just because we would hate for anybody to be asleep at the wheel accidentally. So any questions?
Yes. Mr. Daniels.
Yes, thank you. I just read and I wanted to invite everyone to something we're having in District 6. Is that acceptable, Chair?
You said okay.
Okay, thank you. So on October 23rd, the West Dallas Art Walk, will be happening again. And so we've got, I think at last count, something in the neighborhood of 40 original murals that will be going up throughout West Dallas that are specifically going up for the West Dallas Art Walk. And so that is a mix of West Dallas artists and artists from around the Metroplex. And so I would definitely, I will make sure to get information to staff to pass out to the rest of you, but I would really love it if you all would join us. This is the 4th year that we are doing it in this configuration, and we have some absolutely fantastic talent that is going to be creating massive murals all throughout Fabrication Yard, but not just Fabrication Yard, literally all throughout the West Dallas area, specifically centered around Fab Yard and kind of spilling out from there. But would definitely love to see as many faces as possible. Also have performances that have been commissioned by or brought on by ACPAC and our partnership with them. And so really, really excited to be able to welcome this program, which will consist of live art, will consist of murals that will be on display, and consist of live performances throughout the course of the day. And so we'll get that information over to staff, but would love to see as many of you as possible because this is something that we really look forward to as a community every year. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Daniels, could you send that information to Anne Marie so she can get it out to us, please?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah, the schedule for that. Okay. Yes, Mr. Ridley.
So, Chair and Jennifer, I was wondering if at one of our next meetings, can we have a briefing by the Dallas Tourism? I forget what they call themselves now. But the Tourism Council, Visit Dallas.
Oh, Visit Dallas. Yes. So it might be November. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would love for them to present to us so they feel that we're part of them and we're part of vice versa.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Any other announcements or comments?
This is Commissioner Meek. I just wanted to, we didn't read all of the names of these individual artists who got grants from Arts Activate, but I just wanted to once again, commend the staff for all the hard work. I know that's a lot of artists, and I noticed that we have quite a number of artists of color who are new, who've gotten money, so we're making progress. I'm very happy to see that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if there are no more comments or announcements, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
6:30.
Everyone.
Thank you all.